No. He'll choke. Catherine, what are you doing? Michael's voice cracked across the kitchen like a thunderclap, but the woman in the blue maid's uniform didn't flinch. She sat steady in front of the son, holding a plate of cookies, and there on the table his 2-year-old, the boy who hadn't eaten in 2 weeks, was chewing. Michael's hands trembled as he covered his mouth. Tears blurred the scene before him. The golden light, the crumbs on Ethan's lips, the impossible sight he'd begged for every night in silence. 2 weeks of failure. 2 weeks of watching his son fade away in the Trebek apartment, surrounded by doctors, specialists, and empty promises. None of them could reach him. Not one. And now this woman, a stranger from Brooklyn he'd hired out of desperation, had done what none of them could. When Lauren died giving birth to Ethan, Michael lost the only person who ever made life feel real. His son was supposed to be what kept him grounded, his reason to stay human. But grief had swallowed them both. Ethan stopped talking, stopped smiling, stopped eating. Michael tried everything money could buy: private therapists, feeding clinics, hospital stays. Nothing worked. Every night, he sat by his son's crib, whispering promises into quiet. Just one bite, buddy, please. And every morning he woke to the same silence. Until today. Catherine Mark wasn't like the others. She didn't carry charts or clipboards. She arrived with subway pass, a worn notebook, and hands that had seen hard work. She didn't ask questions about pay or benefits. She just looked Michael in the eye and said softly, "I've been where he is." He didn't understand what she meant. Not yet, but her calmness unnerved him, because when she first met Ethan, she didn't try to feed him. She just sat, listened, prayed. There was something about her, a quiet kind of faith that didn't sound rehearsed. Catherine had lost her own child years ago. She knew what it was like to love someone you couldn't save. And maybe that's why, when she held that cookie out to Ethan, she didn't say a word. She just waited, and somehow that was enough. Catherine's first morning at the Rober apartment started before dawn. She took the 5:10 train from Brooklyn, watching the skyline light up through the fog. By the time she reached the marble lobby, she'd rehearsed her promise under her breath. "God, if you set me here, don't let me fail him." She didn't know that upstairs, a millionaire was losing faith in everything, except the small boy who refused to eat. When the elevator doors opened to the penthouse, the quiet hit her first. Not peaceful quiet, hollow quiet, like a place that used to breathe but forgot how. The kitchen looked like a magazine cover. White marble counters, spotless appliances, bowls arranged by size and color. Everything in perfect order, everything lifeless. Mrs. Delaney, the elderly housekeeper, handed Catherine an apron and spoke in a low, careful voice. "Breakfast at 7. The boy eats with Mr. Rober, or at least he used to." Catherine nodded, tying her apron. "I'll take care of it." She set out scrambled eggs, toast, and a small glass of milk. The smell filled the kitchen, warm and gentle, but no one came. By 8, the plate sat untouched. By 9, the toast had gone cold. When Michael finally appeared, he was still in his suit from the night before. His tie was loose, his eyes bloodshot. He didn't look at her when he spoke. "You're the new maid?" "Yes, sir." Catherine Mark. He nodded once, mechanical. "You can clean, cook, do whatever Mrs. Delaney tells you. But don't expect him to respond. He doesn't talk. He doesn't eat." "I understand," she said softly. Michael glanced toward the hallway that led to Ethan's room. No one's been able to help him. Not the therapist, not the doctors. He's just gone somewhere I can't reach. Then he left. No anger, no hope, just exhaustion in the suit. Catherine looked around again. The untouched plates, the neat furniture, the giant portrait above the fireplace. A smiling woman with honey-colored hair holding a baby boy. Lauren, the wife he'd lost. The mother Ethan would never know. Catherine's chest tightened. This house wasn't starving for food. It was starving for presence. For a touch. For the sound of someone's heart still beating in it. She turned toward the window, the skyline gleaming in morning light, and whispered, "Show me how to help them, Lord. Please." If you've ever watched someone fade right in front of you and felt powerless to stop it, pause for a moment. Stories like this remind us why presence matters more than perfection. Stay with us. Don't turn away now. Catherine took a deep breath, rolled up her sleeves, and stepped into the silence. By the second morning, Catherine had learned the rhythm of the Rober apartment. The hours moved with mechanical precision. Meals prepared, meetings taken, silence maintained. Every sound felt like an intrusion, every word an echo. While dusting the living room shelves, she opened a cabinet she hadn't touched yet, a small wooden door tucked beneath the family portrait. Inside sat a thick photo album, its leather cover faded, corners curling with time. She hesitated, then gently lifted it onto the table. The first picture made her smile, a young woman, visibly pregnant, standing in the kitchen wearing an apron dusted in flour. Her hands were sunk into cookie dough, her face glowing with laughter. Lauren Rober. The next few pages told a story in frozen light. Sunday mornings, cookies on cooling racks, Michael's arms around her waist as she stirred a bowl. Catherine could almost smell it. Butter, sugar, vanilla, joy. Mrs. Delaney appeared in the doorway, her voice soft with memory. Those were her favorite days. Sundays. The whole apartment smelled like chocolate and butter. She sighed, eyes misting. She said baking made her feel closer to heaven. Catherine looked up from page. Did she ever write down the recipe? In the top kitchen drawer by the stove, Mrs. Delaney whispered. Mr. Rober never moved it, said it still smelled like her hands. Neither of them noticed Michael standing just beyond the hall. He'd come for coffee, but froze when he saw the album open. His gaze lingered on Lauren's smile, then dropped. Without a word, he turned and walked away, shoulders tightening like a man refusing to bleed in public. Catherine closed the album slowly. You can't heal what you pretend not to see, she murmured. That night, after the city lights dimmed against the river, she stepped quietly into Ethan's room. The air smelled faintly of baby powder and the ghost of lavender lotion. Ethan lay curled under his blanket, small and pale, clutching a toy car in one hand. Catherine knelt beside his crib, her voice barely above a whisper. You know, Ethan, sometimes mommies have to go where we can't follow yet. But they don't stop loving us. They just watch from closer to the stars. She reached her hand to the crib rail, resting it near his. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then, as softly as breath, his tiny fingers reached out and wrapped around hers. Catherine's eyes filled. That's it, sweetheart, she whispered. You're not alone anymore. The apartment was still when Catherine woke that morning, the kind of stillness that made every breath sound too loud. Outside, the city moved like a dream beneath the fog, horns echoing faintly from the streets below. She tied her apron, opened the kitchen drawer, and stared at the folded recipe card Mrs. Delaney had told her about. Lauren's handwriting curled across the paper in faded ink. Chocolate chip cookies, extra butter, always love. Catherine pressed the card to her chest for a moment, then began to gather ingredients. Flour, sugar, eggs. She moved quietly, reverently, as if performing a ritual instead of a recipe. When the butter hit the pan, the smell began to rise, sweet, golden, unmistakable. It drifted through the penthouse like a ghost that remembered its way home. Upstairs, Michael was tightening his tie. When the scent reached him, he froze mid-motion, eyes darting toward the hallway. That smell, chocolate and warmth, it pulled him backward in time faster than he could stop it. Lauren's laughter filled his head. He could see her at the counter, belly round, hair falling into her face as she flicked flour at him. You can't rush love, Mike, she teased. Cookies or people. He'd kissed her then, still tasting sugar on her lips. Then came the memory he never spoke aloud. The hospital, the doctor's expression, the sound of monitors going still. One life arriving, one leaving. That smell now felt like both heaven and hell colliding in his chest. He loosened his tie, sat down hard on the edge of the bed, and buried his face in his hands. Downstairs, Catherine slid the cookies in the oven, the golden edges crisp, center soft. She let them cool before arranging them on a simple white plate. Then she climbed the stairs. Ethan was sitting on the floor beside his crib, toy car in his lap. His eyes followed her as she entered, cautious, curious. I made these today, Catherine said gently, setting the plate on the floor between them. Your mommy used to make them, too. She picked one up, broke it in half, and took a slow bite. You know, when you're really sad, she murmured, warm food can feel like love, like someone hugging you from the inside. Ethan didn't move, but his eyes, wide, unblinking, followed every motion of her hands. Catherine smiled softly. That's okay, she whispered. You can just watch for now. And in the quiet of that moment, the memory of Lauren's love began to stir again, not in the air, but in the heart of a house learning how to feel. Sunday morning broke, quiet over Tribeca. The city outside was silver and slow, the Hudson glinting like a ribbon of light through the glass walls. Catherine moved to the penthouse barefoot, apron tied, whispering under her breath, a prayer she said 100 times before, but never needed more than now. Lord, let this work. Not for me, for him. She pulled out the same recipe card, the one written in Lauren's looping hand, and began again. Flour dusted the counter like snow. The butter melted in rhythm with her heartbeat. As she stirred, she hummed softly, not a song she knew, but something that felt like comfort. When the first tray came out of the oven, the scent filled the room, brown sugar, vanilla, and something unseen. Hope, maybe. She placed the cookies carefully on a small white plate and carried them upstairs. Ethan sat on the table again, tiny in his yellow pajamas, legs swinging without energy. His eyes looked dull, but they followed her as she entered. Catherine smiled, kneeling so she was level with him. Hey, buddy, she said softly. Your mommy used to make these every Sunday morning. She said they taste like love. She placed the plate in front of him and waited. Ethan stared at the cookies, then at her, as if the two were connected somehow. His fingers twitched, uncertain. Catherine didn't push. She simply broke one in half, the chocolate still warm and soft, and took a bite. She said gently. Tastes like home. For a moment, there was only silence. Then Ethan's small hand reached out, trembling. He picked up the other half, looked at it, and brought it to his lips. One bite, then another. Catherine's breath caught. She didn't move, afraid the moment might vanish if she did. The sound of a door opening broke the stillness. Michael froze in the doorway, eyes wide, mouth parting in disbelief. His son was chewing. He dropped to his knees beside them, tears spilling before he could stop them. Ethan looked up, crumbs on his chin, and began to cry, not from hunger, but release. Catherine gathered him into her arms as he sobbed, her own tears falling into his hair. Michael reached out, hand trembling, and touched his son's back. Daddy's here, buddy, he whispered. I'm right here. For the first time in weeks, the silence broke, not with words, but with breathing, weeping, living again. And if this moment moves something inside you, maybe it's because love is still the only real miracle left. Don't just watch. Remember it. Carry it forward. Stay with this story. It matters. That night, the city glowed beneath the penthouse windows, 1,000 lights shimmering on the Hudson like quiet prayers. Ethan lay tucked under his blanket, his little body finally still after the miracle morning. Catherine sat in the chair beside his bed, humming softly as the night folded around them. Miss Catherine? His voice was small, fragile. She leaned forward. Yes, sweetheart. Ethan's eyes glistened in the dark. If I don't eat, I can go see Mommy. The words hit her like a blow to the chest. What did you say, baby? He clutched the edge of his blanket. Grandma said Mommy went to heaven. So I thought, if I stop eating, I could go there too. Then she won't be alone. Catherine's breath trembled. She reached for his tiny hand, holding it tight. Oh, honey, your mommy isn't alone. She's watching you every day. And she wants you to stay right here so she can watch you grow big and strong. Ethan frowned through tears. But Daddy doesn't smile anymore. I thought maybe if I left, he'd go see Mommy too. Her heart broken too. She pressed her forehead to his, tears slipping down her cheeks. No, baby, you're the reason he's still here. You're his whole world. In the doorway, Michael stood frozen. He had come to say goodnight, but those words, his son's impossible logic, cut through him deeper than any grief before. He stepped into the room, his voice cracking. Ethan, The boy turned, startled. Michael knelt beside the bed, his face crumpling. "Buddy, I didn't know. I didn't know you felt that way." Ethan's chin trembled. "You stopped looking at me, Daddy. You stopped reading, stopped playing. I thought I made you sad." Michael broke completely then. He gathered his son into his arms, holding him close. "Oh, God, no. You didn't make me sad. You're the only reason I get up every morning. I just didn't know how to live without her." They stayed like that for a long time, father and son, grief spilling between them until it softened into something else. Catherine turned away, unable to hold back her own tears. In their pain, she saw the shadow of her own, her little boy Marcus, gone too soon. The ache she'd buried for years surged up again. She pressed a trembling hand to her heart. "Thank you, Lord," she whispered, "for letting me help them, even if I couldn't save my own." And in that fragile, sacred room, 3 broken hearts began to heal together, slowly, painfully, beautifully. Weeks passed, and with them, the heavy silence that once haunted the Rober apartment began to lift. The first sound to return was laughter, soft, hesitant at first, then louder, freer. It came from Ethan, sitting at the kitchen table with chocolate smeared across his cheeks, proudly finishing his second cookie. Catherine watched him from across the counter, a quiet smile playing on her lips. "You're getting pretty good at this eating thing, mister." Ethan grinned, his eyes bright again. "Miss Catherine, can we bake cookies every Sunday, like Mommy did?" She nodded, voice gentle. "Every Sunday, sweetheart. We'll make that our special day." They called it Mommy Day. Every week, without fail, they gathered in the kitchen, Ethan on his step stool, Catherine guiding his small hands as he measured sugar, and Michael manning the oven, sleeves rolled up, trying not to burn the edges. The air filled with the smell of butter and warmth and something deeper, peace. One Sunday morning, Ethan sprinkled too many chocolate chips into the bowl, giggling as they scattered across the counter. "That's enough to feed all of New York," Michael teased, laughing. Catherine looked up at him, surprised by the sound. It had been months since she'd heard that laugh, rich, unguarded, alive. For a moment, their eyes met, and something flickered there, something neither dared name. As days turned into weeks, Michael began spending less time at the office and more at home. He'd come into the kitchen for coffee and end up staying, helping Catherine fold laundry or just talking. Sometimes about Ethan, sometimes about Lauren, and sometimes about nothing at all. Their friendship grew in quiet moments. A shared joke, a knowing glance, the soft pause when their hands brushed while reaching for the same plate. It wasn't romance yet, but it was something close, something fragile, tender, waiting. One night after dinner, Ethan fell asleep on the couch, his small body curled under a blanket. Catherine tucked him in while Michael watched from the doorway. "He's sleeping better," he said softly. "Eating better," laughing again. "You've given me back my son." Catherine smiled, her eyes glistening. "He's the one doing the hard work. I just reminded him what love smells like." Michael's voice lowered. "You reminded me, too." She turned away before he could see her tears. Healing, she realized, was contagious. When one heart mended, it gave others permission to do the same. And in that apartment once hollow with grief, life had started to sound like home again. 3 months had passed since laughter first returned to the Rober home. Winter had softened into spring, and the apartment that once echoed with emptiness now pulsed with life. The clatter of breakfast dishes, the sound of small feet racing down the hallway, the hum of quiet joy finding its rhythm again. One Sunday morning, as sunlight spilled across the kitchen counter, Ethan came running toward his father, a crayon-streaked paper clutched in his hand. "Daddy, look what I made." Michael took the drawing carefully. Across the page were 3 smiling figures, a tall man, a woman with long brown hair, and a little boy holding both their hands. Above them, in soft yellow, was a 4th figure drawn in the clouds. Beneath it, Ethan had written in uneven letters, "My family." Michael's breath caught. "Who's that in the sky, buddy?" Ethan grinned. "That's Mommy. She's happy now. She watches us bake cookies." Something broke open in Michael's chest, not in pain, but in release. He realized, finally, that Catherine hadn't filled the space Lauren left behind. She had simply helped him remember her, without drowning in the memory. She had turned grief into something gentle, livable. That night, after Ethan was asleep, Michael stepped out onto the balcony. The city glittered beneath him, 1,000 windows breathing light into the dark. Catherine joined him quietly, wrapping her sweater tighter around her shoulders. "Ethan's drawing," he began, his voice low. "It made me realize something. You didn't replace Lauren. You helped me see her again, the way she wanted to be remembered. Not as loss, but as love." Catherine looked down, her throat tight. "Michael," he turned to her, "you brought my family back to life. And somewhere along the way, you became part of it." Silence lingered, warm and trembling. She could feel his gaze, steady and kind, searching for permission. "I don't know if I'm ready," she whispered. "I don't want to take something sacred in." He shook his head. "You aren't taking anything away. You're what love looks like when it returns." Her eyes glistened. "I think I've been falling for you too." He stepped closer. The wind brushed past them, carrying the faint sound of the city below. And there, beneath the soft glow of Manhattan's skyline, they kissed, quiet, healing, and pure. Love, at last, had found its way home. Months passed, and spring ripened into summer. The Rober's world, once framed by grief, now bloomed with quiet joy. On a soft June afternoon, beneath the spreading branches of a park in Brooklyn, Michael and Catherine stood side by side, hands trembling but sure. It wasn't a grand affair, just close friends, a few neighbors, and Ethan in a tiny suit that was slightly too big. He clutched the ring pillow like it was a secret treasure, his grin wide and uncontainable. The ceremony was simple. A single violin played under the trees. The vows were whispered, not for show, but for truth. Michael's voice cracked when he promised to cherish both Catherine and Ethan, to keep their home filled with laughter and faith. Catherine's eyes glistened as she vowed to love without fear, to honor the memory that brought them together, and to build something new from its ashes. When the rings were exchanged, Ethan cheered so loudly that everyone laughed. It was perfect, messy, heartfelt, human. Afterward, they gathered at a picnic table draped with white linen. There were cookies instead of cake, Lauren's recipe, baked that morning by all three of them. Each bite tasted like remembrance and renewal, like love carrying itself forward. Weeks later, the rhythm of home settled back in. Sunday mornings once again became sacred. The smell of butter and sugar drifted through the apartment as Ethan mixed dough, his little arms dusted with flour. Michael stood at the stove flipping pancakes, humming off-key, while Catherine swayed to the quiet music playing from the radio. Ethan looked up from his bowl, eyes bright. "We're happy now, right?" Michael turned, smiling softly. "Yeah, buddy, we are." For a moment, everything stood still. The light, the laughter, the heartbeat of a home reborn. Catherine caught Michael's gaze, and in that shared silence was a proof of all they'd fought through to reach this peace. If you ever doubted that love can rebuild what grief destroys, remember this family. Remember that healing doesn't arrive all at once. It comes through presence, through patience, through hands that keep baking even when the heart still trembles. Subscribe to hope itself by carrying this story in your heart. Sometimes the smallest acts, a cookie, a promise, are what keep us alive. The millionaire's only son hadn't eaten in 2 weeks, but that wasn't really the story. The miracle was that love, once lost, had found its way home again.